Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some of the challenges that are facing the Turkish education system.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there.
And we've got a really interesting source to guide us.
Yeah, this should be good.
So we're going to be looking at this YouTube interview between Professor Dr. Yaşar Özdin.
Okay.
And
familiar with his work?
You probably are. He's kind of a leading voice in Turkish education these days.
Yes, that's definitely.
And he was being interviewed by Şahin Aybek'le, who's the host over at the show called 23 Degrees.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that show.
And Professor Özdin uses this really striking analogy of these like 3 M's that everybody always talks about when it comes to educational reform.
Okay.
So we're talking method, material, and curriculum.
For the big 3, yes.
Yeah. But he makes this really interesting argument that maybe these are kind of more like distractions than actual solutions.
Okay.
So, instead of really getting at the core issues that need to be addressed, they kind of get fixated on these 3 things.
I see.
And he even says, it's a little bit like putting a fancy new bandage on a broken leg.
Okay.
Like, yeah, okay, it looks better, but it's not actually doing anything to address the real problem.
Right. It's just kind of covering it up.
Exactly. And the way I was thinking about this is like politicians love to focus on these 3 M's.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to kind of create this illusion of progress.
Sure.
Without actually having to do the hard work.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Of, tackling things like teacher training or inequality.
Right.
And, we see this happening all the time. Like, well, think about like even just recently, all the debates that have been happening in Turkey surrounding curriculum changes.
Yeah, I'm all over the news.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so much of the discussion is around, should we be including more Ottoman history?
Right.
Or should there be more religious studies in the curriculum?
Yeah.
And those are valid discussions to have.
Sure.
But it often feels like they overshadow the more pressing need for updated teaching methods that actually prepare students for like a 21st century workforce.
Yeah, like are we teaching them how to think critically or just memorize a bunch of facts?
Right, exactly. And so Professor Özdin, he uses another analogy that I found really powerful.
Okay.
He compares traditional education to nitrogen.
Nitrogen. Interesting.
Yeah, so like, nitrogen, it's all around us.
Right.
It takes up space, but it doesn't actually fuel anything.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
And he's saying that a lot of what passes for education today is kind of like that.
It's like empty calories.
Yeah.
You're consuming it, but it's not giving you any real sustenance.
Exactly. And he's really getting at the heart of what makes education truly effective.
So what's he saying? Like we need to ditch the nitrogen and find the educational equivalent of oxygen?
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, if we want students to really thrive, we need to give them something that fuels their learning, not just fills up space.
Absolutely. And so, the way I was thinking about this is like, have you ever taken a class?
Oh, yeah.
Where you felt like you were just being filled up with information?
Oh, tons of them.
But it didn't actually stick with you?
Yeah, totally. I can remember entire courses where I memorized facts just for the exam and then promptly forgot everything afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was never really integrated into my understanding of the world.
So if obsessing over the 3 M's isn't the answer, what is?
Yeah, good question.
Well, Professor Özdin seems to think that the answer lies in something much more fundamental.
Okay.
The human element.
Ah, now we're talking.
Yeah, he emphasizes that the most critical element in education is the human one.
Makes sense.
It's the teachers and the students.
At the end of the day, yeah.
And he's saying that without investing in their needs and development, no amount of tinkering with methods or materials is actually going to have a lasting impact.
It's like having all the ingredients for a gourmet meal. But no chef to bring it all together.
Exactly. And so Professor Özdin, he calls for high-quality teacher training programs.
Oh, yeah.
That go beyond just theoretical knowledge.
Yeah.
And actually provide real-world experience.
Practical application, that's key.
He even points to the historical success of the co-institulary.
The co-institulary, what are those?
So these were village institutes that thrived in Turkey several decades ago.
Oh, wow.
And they really integrated practical skills.
Okay.
Community engagement and strong teacher development.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder why that model hasn't been replicated more in recent times.
It does make you think.
And, one of the key challenges that Professor Özdin highlights is this kind of like short-term thinking.
Oh, that's a problem everywhere.
That plagues Turkish education policy.
I see what you mean.
this pressure to show quick results.
Right, especially with the 4-year election cycle always looming.
Exactly. And he says it's almost like trying to grow a redwood tree in a flower pot. You might see a little sprout.
Yeah.
But it'll never reach its full potential.
You need a solid foundation.
Right. And he contrasts this with countries like Finland.
Okay.
Which are, renowned for their successful education systems.
Yeah, they consistently rank at the top.
And they've adopted these long-term strategies that provide stability.
Right.
And allow for meaningful progress.
So it's about playing the long game.
Yeah, and this kind of short-term focus makes it almost impossible to address what Professor Usdin sees as kind of the deepest issue.
Which is?
This breakdown of trust within the education system.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, he argues that this mistrust permeates everything.
How so?
Well, he says it makes meaningful dialogue and collaboration nearly impossible.
I can see that.
Because politicians, educators, and even citizens all view each other with suspicion.
Yeah, so instead of working together to find solutions, everyone's just pointing fingers.
Exactly. And it creates this climate where even seemingly neutral topics become these huge battlegrounds.
Oh, yeah, we see that all the time.
And he gives some very specific examples of how this plays out.
Like what?
Well, like the deep suspicion surrounding teacher unions.
Okay.
Or the way that parental involvement in school governance is often met with resistance.
It's like everyone's afraid of losing control.
Yeah, and it just creates this environment where it's so hard to make any real progress.
It sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. And, one of the things that Professor Usdin really emphasizes is this missed opportunity.
What opportunity?
Of UNESCO's guidance.
UNESCO, I'm not sure I follow.
So UNESCO has been really advocating for this idea of fostering a culture of living together.
Okay.
As being central to education reform.
That makes sense.
But Professor Usdin, he's really frustrated.
Why is that?
Because he feels like this is largely absent from the Turkish debate.
So instead of focusing on shared values and building bridges, the conversation gets hijacked by these ideological battles.
Exactly. It's like we're so dizzy arguing about what should be taught.
Yeah.
That we've completely forgotten about the how.
How?
Like, how can we create an environment where learning can actually flourish?
Yeah, that's a much deeper question.
And that's where things get really interesting.
I'm all ears. So he's saying it's not just about, the logistics of education.
Right.
It's about this deeper societal problem, this erosion of trust that he sees.
Yeah, he paints a pretty bleak picture, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Of the state of Turkish society.
He does, but I think, sometimes you need that. A bit of a wake-up call to realize, okay, things aren't as rosy as we might think.
So how do we tackle something like that?
Right. How do you even begin to address something so ingrained?
Yeah.
Well, he keeps coming back to this example of the village institutes, those co-institulary we were talking about.
Yeah.
And how they managed to create this sense of shared purpose.
Yeah.
And community involvement. There were more than just schools. They were these centers for social and economic development.
So it's they understood that education can't just exist in this vacuum.
Exactly. It's woven into the fabric of society.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to UNESCO and this idea of cultivating a culture of living together, which Professor Usdin really sees as a roadmap for rebuilding trust.
It's we've become so preoccupied with building walls that we've forgotten about the importance of building bridges.
That's a good way to put it.
And so instead of obsessing over what's being taught,
what's in the textbooks,
Professor Usdin is saying we should really focus on how it's being taught.
Right.
How do you create those learning environments that promote critical thinking, empathy, respect for different perspectives?
It's a totally different approach.
And it sounds like he's calling for a pretty major paradigm shift.
Yeah.
The way we think about education in Turkey.
Away from that top-down control towards something more collaborative,
right.
more community-oriented.
And ultimately, equipping students with more than just knowledge and skills.
Yeah. It's about values, attitudes.
The things you need to actually navigate.
Exactly.
A world that's becoming increasingly
complex.
Yeah.
Interconnected.
But it's interesting because, on the one hand, he's really highlighting all these challenges.
Right. He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
But then on the other hand, he also offers this glimmer of hope.
I think that's important.
That change is possible.
You need that to keep going.
Yeah. But it requires us to really shift our mindset.
So what does that look like in practice?
I mean, how do we actually go about doing that?
It starts with recognizing that education isn't just about individual achievement. Yeah. It's about creating a more just and equitable society.
For everyone.
Yeah, not just the privileged few.
So it's not just about getting good grades.
Right.
And landing a high-paying job.
It's about being a good citizen.
Yeah.
Contributing to the common good.
And Professor Usdin says that this shift requires a long-term vision.
Okay.
And a willingness to really invest in the human element.
Which,
providing teachers with the training and support they need to actually nurture critical thinking, creativity, empathy in their students.
He really believes in the power of teachers.
He does.
And for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones on the front lines.
They are.
Of this battle for a better future.
Shaping young minds, inspiring a new generation.
And it can't just be left to teachers.
Right.
It sounds like he's calling for a much broader...
A collective effort.
Yeah, like a societal awakening.
To the power of education.
And I think that message really resonates with a lot of people in Turkey.
I can see.
Who are just feeling really disillusioned with the current state of education.
It's like we've lost our way.
And he reminds us that we can't keep doing the same things and expecting different results.
If that's not the definition of insanity.
Yeah. We need a new way of thinking and talking about education.
And he really challenges us.
He does.
To think critically about the purpose of education and the kind of society we want to create.
And it's not just about these abstract ideals.
Right.
It's about taking concrete actions to build a more just and equitable future.
For everyone.
So what are some of those concrete actions?
Well, he talks a lot about the importance of early childhood education.
Okay.
Making sure that all children have access to quality learning experiences.
From a young age.
Right? Setting that foundation early on.
And he also stresses the need to address those root causes of inequality.
Like poverty, discrimination.
Those things that create barriers to educational success.
It's about leveling the playing field.
So it's this much more holistic approach.
It is.
That recognizes the interconnectedness of education.
With all these broader issues, social, economic.
You can't just isolate it.
No, it's all connected.
And that brings us back to this idea of fostering a culture of living together. And it feels like he's saying, we need to move beyond this polarization
into division
that has really come to characterize Turkish society.
It's us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful.
And he believes that education can actually be a powerful tool.
It can.
For building those bridges and promoting understanding.
Across different groups.
But that requires us to be willing to...
To engage in dialogue.
Yeah.
To listen to each other.
And to find that common ground.
Even when we disagree.
Which can be really hard.
It is.
In the current climate.
Especially these days.
But Professor Usdin seems to believe that it's an essential step.
If we want to create a better future.
For Turkey.
For everyone.
And he reminds us that education isn't just about preparing students for the world.
No, it's about preparing the world.
For our students.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And he leaves us with this final question.
Okay.
You know, what kind of world do we want our children to inherit?
That's a powerful question.
And it should really guide our efforts.
Absolutely.
To reform and improve education.
Because it's not just about the present.
Right.
It's about the future.
And so as we kind of emerge from this deep dive into the Turkish education system.
What are we left with?
I'm left with this sense of both urgency and possibility.
I like that.
Like, yeah, the challenges are huge.
They are.
But the potential for positive change is also immense.
It is, if we can harness it.
And Professor Usdin's insights offer a roadmap.
A way forward.
A call to action.
For all of us.
Who believe in the power of education.
To make a difference.
And he reminds us that it's not just about acquiring knowledge.
Yeah, it's about so much more.
It's about cultivating those values.
Wow.
Attitude skills that are necessary to create a more just,
equitable,
harmonious society.
We need all of that.
And he challenges us to move beyond
those simplistic narratives, those political agendas,
and to embrace a more holistic vision
that recognizes the interconnectedness
of individual growth,
societal well-being,
the creation of a shared future.
It's all part of the same tapestry.
And so, you know, as we wrap up this deep dive,
where to go from here?
I'm curious what resonates most with you, the listener.
What stood out?
What insights are you going to carry with you?
Are you a parent trying to figure out this system?
Yeah.
Are you an educator looking for ways to inspire your students?
Or are you just a concerned citizen
who sees how important education is?
For the future of Turkey.
Wherever you stand.
We encourage you to keep exploring these questions.
Yeah, keep the conversation going.
Talk to your communities.
Advocate for change.
And remember, the future of education isn't something that just happens to us.
No.
It's something we create.
Together.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you found it insightful.
We hope it sparked some new ideas.
And inspired you to get involved.
In shaping a brighter future.
For Turkish education.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.
And keep learning.
And he really pushes us to see it as more than just this ladder to individual success.
Like climb the ladder, get the good grades, get the good job.
Yeah, he wants us to embrace the idea that it can be this force for collective progress.
So it's about more than just personal gain.
Right. It's about fostering those values that are essential for a thriving society.
Like what?
Empathy, critical thinking, collaboration.
Those are big ones.
They are.
And he asked this question that's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
He says, if we keep doing the same things, expecting different results.
Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, are we just stuck?
Like in this cycle of doing the same things over and over.
And expecting a different outcome.
And getting nowhere.
So we need a real shift.
We do.
Our approach.
A fundamental shift.
And I think that shift begins with each one of us
taking responsibility
for the kind of education system
we want to see.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
it's been a fascinating conversation.
I'm really curious to hear what's resonating
with you,
with our listeners.
What really stood out for you?
What are you taking away from this?
What will you carry with you?
Maybe you're a parent.
Struggling to navigate the system.
Maybe you're an educator.
Trying to find new ways.
To inspire your students.
Or maybe you're just
a concerned citizen.
Who sees how important this all is.
For the future of Turkey.
Whoever you are.
We encourage you to keep exploring these questions.
Talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues.
Advocate for policies
that support a better vision.
For education.
Because the future of education.
It isn't something that just happens.
It's something we create.
Together.
And on that note,
we want to thank you for joining us
on this deep dive into the Turkish education system.
We hope it's giving you some new insights.
Some food for thought.
And most importantly, we hope it's inspired you
to get involved.
To be part of the solution.
To help shape a brighter future.
For Turkish education.
It's just say.
Keep diving deep.
Keep learning.
And keep those conversations going.